In this video, we're going to go over configuring your system so that players are able to connect to your DM host PC, and we're going to take a look at setting up a new campaign. So when we are preparing to host a game as the DM, we need to make sure that our players are capable of connecting to us. So one easy way that we can test whether our players are capable of connecting is to select this Run Test button here. Now I'm on the Create New Campaign area. It's also available in the Load Campaign area. But this Run Test button will run a series of tests, and it will eventually come back with a result of a green success, hopefully. If you get anything else, it means your players may not be able to connect to you. So when you are doing the run test and when you are configuring things so that your players can connect, the most important thing is that you have to double check that port 1802 is properly forwarded to the DM host PC. This can involve configuration in the router or any other networking gear that you may have or may have control over. It's possible that your internet service providers may allow or not allow routing of that port, and it may require configuration with them. So the how-to of configuring your system, your networking gear, so that port 1802 is properly forwarded to your DM host PC is beyond the scope of this particular video. I do highly recommend, if you are having troubles getting the port forwarded properly, that you try and ask the questions on either the Fantasy Grounds forums. There's a series of threads that discuss that very topic. Also on the Fantasy Grounds official Discord, there is a support area with people, and the Fantasy Grounds College Discord has an Ask the Expert section. And any one of those has a number of people with experience dealing with these kinds of issues that can hopefully walk you through and help you get things configured. The other element that is often needed to be configured is a firewall, either on the PC or on the network itself. And you have to make sure that the firewall is configured to allow port 1802. So those two things, getting them configured, are generally the most commonly required elements in order to make sure that players are able to connect. Now, given that, there are situations where no matter what you do, you just do not have the control over the networking gear, the internet service provider, or whatever, in such a way that you will not be able to successfully forward those ports. And in those instances, your workaround option is to use a VPN. Now, VPN is some software, stands for Virtual Private Network, that allows you to link a few PCs together to form a virtual private network, in which case both the DM and the players would all need to be on the same VPN, and once that was done successfully, then they would be able to see each other's instance. Now, there are a number of VPN solutions that are known to work with Fantasy Grounds. I would suggest that you check them out on the Fantasy Grounds forums, as well as the previously mentioned support Discord areas. And they can help you get those and test it out. Not all VPN solutions will work with Fantasy Grounds. Certain capabilities have to be available within the VPN. Once we have our connection test up and running, then we need to know what we can provide to our players to allow them to connect. Now, the players, when they typically join, will either have an IP address or an alias. Now, the alias system is available right here. You check this button in order to enable the alias system, and then click the brown Generate Alias. Now, what this does is it generates a 4-word simple phrase that's easy to share, easy to remember, that can be shared with your players. And then when they use that 4-word phrase in the host part of the join game, so if I come here to join game, you can see here it's got these 4-word aliases. And when you use that 4 words, it will check with SmiteWorks servers and resolve your proper external IP address. Now, this is nice because you can maintain the same alias even if your public external IP address has changed. So internet service providers will sometimes modify or change your public IP address as necessary for their network management. So if you don't use an alias, you may run into situations where your players are trying to connect to a previous IP address, unless you're very careful about monitoring that. But by using the alias system, you can avoid most of those issues. If you do want to provide your external IP address instead, you can click on this click to retrieve button. I'm not going to do that for the video, but you can click on this click to retrieve button and it will show your public IP address, which can then be provided to the players for connection. All right, on to creating a new campaign. So when we're creating a new campaign, we have the information set up here. And first off is the campaign name. Now the name that we use here will be created as a folder in your Fantasy Grounds data directory. So if we come up to our Fantasy Grounds data directory and go into campaigns, all of the folders here, the build campaign, these are all campaigns that were created from the campaign name that you put in here. You may not have everything that I have, but that's all right. So it's important in your campaign name to only use characters that your operating system allows. Next up is your username. This is optional. You can just leave it as the default, which will be GM. Otherwise, you can put in a specific username. This is just going to be what the GM is called once he's connected. And next up, we have our password. Now, I highly recommend that you have a password on every campaign, even if it's short, even a single character. And the reason for this is to help prevent accidental connections to your desktop. The alias system that we discussed previously is not guaranteed to be unique or private forever. And so it is possible that some GM in the past has generated that same alias and players may attempt to connect to it, even if it's no longer being used by that DM and in fact was generated for you. So it's important to, or a good practice, to set a simple password that you can share with your players, and then it will avoid people accidentally connecting to your running instance. Now, once we've got that set up, we can go ahead and select our rule set and our extensions. Here along this left-hand side, we have a series of rule sets. The ones that are in darker text are ones that I currently have downloaded or purchased. The ones in the lighter gray text are ones that I do not currently own, and I have a link here that I can choose to purchase them. Now, some of these are rule sets provided by SmiteWorks. Some are freely offered, like Morecore and Doorcore, are freely offered on the Fantasy Grounds forums, and there's a wide variety of rule sets. So for today, I'm just going to take a look at the 5th edition rule set, as that's the one that I play the most, and we'll go ahead and select that rule set. Next up, we have an option to select various extensions. Now, there are a wide variety of kinds of extensions that do different things. So initially, I highly recommend that you not do any extensions until you are comfortable with how Fantasy Grounds is intended to operate. Once you understand how it's intended to operate, how it operates by default, then you'll be able to know if an extension is causing issues or misbehaving or causing behavior that's unexpected. So starting off with the different types of extensions, in my head, I kind of think of them in 4 different categories. The first off are decal extensions. And decal extensions are simply some artwork that can be added. Often these are included with various adventures that you might buy. These are artwork that can be added to the background of your Fantasy Grounds desktop. Next up, a little bit bigger and more expansive, are the themes. The theme extensions change the entire kind of look and feel of Fantasy Grounds. They change all of the artwork and how the buttons are displayed and stuff, but they then generally don't change any of the underlying functionality. Next up, similar to themes and decals, are the font extensions, which usually are just simple. They modify the fonts that are used to display to make things easier to read or to provide additional fonts into Fantasy Grounds. And then there's all of the extensions that provide additional functionality. These are things that may change how the rule set works. They may change how They may add additional data types. They may change how different functions behave. And so these are the ones that have the greatest chance of causing issues with your game. And so it is your responsibility as the DM to make sure that your extensions that you are using are compatible. Not all extensions are compatible one with another. Can be conflicts if both extensions try to modify the same set of code. It can cause all kinds of issues with how that extensions may run when they're both loaded. So it's on you to make sure that they work well together. Also to make sure that your extensions are up to date. If there has been a recent Fantasy Grounds update, some extensions are more likely to break than others, but it's very possible that changes to Fantasy Grounds, the underlying rule sets and things, will break how some extensions work. So it's on you to make sure that everything is up to date. Once you have selected all of the extensions that you want available, and you have your rule set selected, you can go ahead and click Start. Doing so will generate the campaign using the whatever name we selected and the password, and open up our brand new campaign. And I'll go ahead and open this without anything connected. And it'll take a moment to load because Fantasy Grounds is attempting to go through all of the modules and everything else that is potentially available and getting it organized so that it can be loaded. Now we had a theme selected, which is why this theme is now currently showing, and this new campaign has been generated. Now if I come back out to the launcher and I come back into the Fantasy Grounds data folder, here in campaigns you can see this new campaign folder was created for the campaign that we just created. Later on, if you want to make changes, you can change them here in the load campaign. You can come here to select the campaign that you want to make changes, and you can change the username, password, turn on and off various extensions. If you need to rename a campaign, you can do so by closing Fantasy Grounds completely, going to the Fantasy Grounds data directory and renaming that folder. When you rename that folder and then relaunch Fantasy Grounds, it will go ahead and show the new name here on the campaign selection window. Thank you.